Hello, Lee. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation to come and chat with me today. I really appreciate it, especially with the time difference. I would love you to introduce yourself to my audience and to your audience because you have been fantastic over LinkedIn and really built yourself as a true industry expert for CV writing.
Thank you, Tricia, and thanks for inviting me to come on to your, I would call this a little show, because what you've started on LinkedIn is, you're interviewing people in the industry and getting to know them, and I think that's great, so thank you very much. Yeah, so my name's Lee Woodrow. I started writing CVs in 2008. It was a weird story how I got in the industry. My background is I'm ex-military, so in the military I dealt with maritime, I dealt with IT projects, and I dealt with private security and intelligence. After that, in 2003, I left the military and I got into the oil and gas industry, which really opened up my eyes to the corporate world. And I traveled all over the world. I mean, I've worked in 36 countries to date. In 2008, when I was working for one of these oil and gas corporations, an internal job came up. So I was writing my CV, and I happened to be in the Sahara Desert, of all places, in Algeria. And I wanted to get out of there. I'd spent 4 years in the desert, and I wanted to go work back in the UK, where the grass was supposedly greener. And I wrote my CV, and someone came in the office and said, "Oh, you've done a nice job there, Lee. Could you write mine?" So I said, "Well, I could do, but time is money, I'll charge you $50. I think there was a bunch of Canadians on the rig, so I charged $50. And before I'd known it, I'd written about 20 CVs, and I walked off the rig with a handful of cash, and I thought, well, this is quite lucrative. So I made my first website, which was called Oil Guru, and it was an oil and gas job board. So this is how I understand applicant tracking systems and things like this, because I made one. I basically bought an off-the-shelf solution, and then I customized it for my own job board. And then over the years, I just built up the business. And I would say after 7 years of doing it on the side, because I was going away and working as an engineer and project manager, doing this on the side, eventually it earned enough money to earn a living off. I dropped out of the game, basically moved back home permanently, and now I work from home. I've got a garden office at home. This is where I work, and I've been doing it full time for the last 3 years. And LinkedIn has been the key, I would say, to my success. LinkedIn has given me the ability to reach out every day to potential customers, send outreach emails, onboard them properly. I mean, I would say there's several things that you need to make a successful CV writing business work. Number one is your LinkedIn profile. You need the brand, and that brand is your reputation. It needs to look professional. Then you need a website, some kind of landing page where people can come on there and you can convert them into customers. But yeah, that's my story.
That's really fantastic. I think it's something, everyone can take a leaf out of your book, going from one side to the completely opposite and advising people. I guess I definitely agree with you that LinkedIn is a fantastic platform to be able to open your network. You mentioned that you're working with oil and gas resumes. Is this your main focus, or do you work with other type CVs? And if so, is there a difference between oil and gas or marine type resumes versus maybe everyday Low Joe?
Yeah, so initially, oil and gas was my forte. Well, there was two specialities for me. It was either military, people transitioning from the military into civilian street, because I've been there and I've done it and I successfully made that transition. And there's a lot of guys and girls, women out there that struggle with that when they come out. It doesn't matter what level you are. You might be a non-commissioned officer. You might be a commissioned officer. I mean, I've dealt with people who are soldiers, who are privates, people who are sergeant majors, but also people who are very, very senior. So, I've dealt with captains, majors, lieutenants, all range of different people in different militaries, not just the British military, but American. I've dealt with people in the Middle East. After that, I mean, I've got 14 years hands-on experience in oil and gas, both in upstream sectors, midstream and downstream. When I finished in the game, I was actually a drilling project manager. Prior to that, I'd worked on process facilities in various deserts and different places in the world. So I've got quite a good knowledge of all the areas of oil and gas, plus a good knowledge of maritime. Now, since I started started my company, I still deal with those areas, but but if you can CV write and you can communicate with a customer, you've got an understanding of the industry. I can deal with just about anyone these days, and I've kind of moved into more maritime CVs and a lot of IT CVs. I mean, my background in the military is telecommunications and IT, so I can speak to these people in IT. I'm also dealing with a lot of developers lately as well, because I find there are certain industries where you're either an extrovert like myself and you, or you can be an introvert. And there's a lot of people in software development which are introverts, and they struggle talking, they struggle writing CVs, they struggle marketing themselves. And I'm quite good at bridging that gap. So I deal with all sorts of people these days. But to answer your other question, is there a difference in the CVs with maritime and oil and gas? Yeah, there is. I'll give you an example. If you work offshore, you're going to have very specific courses that you've done. You also have to go and have a medical. So you're going to have sections on the CV which include the medicals you've had. If you're working on a vessel, for instance, you're going to have all the STCW courses, but you're also going to have the Eng1 medical. There's different medicals if you want to work in the North Sea in the oil and gas industry. So there are various, different sections. But again, when I get a client on board, it depends on how old they are, the level that they're at in the hierarchy. I mean, if you're a managing director, you're a senior executive, or you're a consultant, you're a leading industry expert, you might have you might have written a bunch of publications. Not everybody's done that. So you're going to have a section on your CV called publications. You might have done some public speaking events. You might be on a working group for some particular society, or a level of membership in an organization. Those kind of things need to go on the CV as well.
Yeah, I think
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I think you touched on a good point, and maybe it stresses on the importance of maybe doing your research. If you are going to hire or work with a professional CV writer, it's important that you understand their background as well, because at the end of the day, they are familiar with the jargon, with maybe the courses, and how to structure you for that specific industry. And definitely myself, I know I've tried to sort of palm off or give away some resumes that I myself are not comfortable with, even though I foresee a couple of hundreds of bucks. But I think at the end of the day, it really strengthens the point that you need to be selective in who you choose as a CV writer. And it doesn't matter if there's competition among us, because everyone is suited for someone particular.
Qualification goes both ways, right? And I remember when I started as an entrepreneur, I'd take any CV that there was, because when you start a business, you haven't got very good cash flow, and you want to take on the work. And I remember back in the day, I really stretched myself when I stepped out of the oil and gas industry and pushed this full time. But you've got to, often I'll have a little, I would call it like an exploratory call with someone. Typically in that call, I would always mention my price list to begin with, because you can get an hour into a call with someone and then you tell them your price list and you've wasted an hour. So you've got to pre-qualify them, so this is how much, this package is going to be. So they know how much it's going to be, but also you need to make sure that you're familiar with their background, and specifically like military trades. If you haven't been in the military and you don't understand, certain abbreviations, the terminology that they use, you're really, really going to struggle with dealing with a customer like that. Like, it's exactly the same in the oil and gas industry. It's very, very complex. I mentioned just a little while ago, upstream, midstream, and downstream. If you've never been in the oil and gas industry, you won't understand what that is. People might talk about a MODU, they might talk about a semi-submersible, an FPSO, an FSU. If you haven't worked on those places, you can't visualize it. And then when they're telling you their story, you're not going to be able to write it down on a piece of paper. I have had, I would probably say 10% of my clients, they've dealt with CV writers before. They've paid a price before, and they've come to me to fix it because the CV writer doesn't understand the industry.
Yes, I absolutely.
So and if you're listening to this, make sure you pick someone who's got experience in the industry.
Absolutely agree. And in fact, this is probably, I'm in the same boat. A lot of bigger organizations on a global scale that offer CV writing quite often don't do it well because of this. They're sort of a jack of all trades, a master of none. I want to come back on 2 points in particular, but the first being, you mentioned ATS. I know I'm Australian, based in Dubai, and you're based in the UK, and all regions are using ATS. Is this something that you are familiar with? Do you still have a lot of applicants needing to pass this? And what is it from your perspective that how it works, or what do we need to overcome it?
Over the last 10 years, I would say, there's been a shift. You keep hearing this word digital transformation everywhere, right? It's happened. We're at the end of it. You know, a lot of systems used to be on site. IT systems used to be on site. I mean, back in the day, you would potentially email, well, you used to take your CV to and print it off,
Yeah.
physically hand it to someone. I remember those days. You know, I've been around knocking on people's doors and can I have my CV in? This is back in the day. Then it kind of, you know, email came in. Everybody had an AOL.com email address, and that kind of gives away your age if you put that on a CV. But you could physically email your CV to someone. Everyone had, you know, you could PDF it, it would lock in, and you could send it off to someone. Prior to databases and things, people would print these off and they'd put them in a filing cabinet. So they could go through the filing cabinet and they could see, you know, what CVs they had. What happened then with the, you know, the digital age, databases came in. Now, a lot of people would have a database on site. You'd send them the CV and they would put it into their database. Databases are searchable, right, using Boolean search. You could use operators like and, or not. So even on like SAP systems or like JD Edwards and things like that, you could, or ERP systems, you can log into them and you can search the database. And if you've got something in the database, you'll find it. So this is where applicant tracking systems came in. So under, I would say, the guise of enterprise resource planning, the smart people in recruitment said, hey, we need systems to streamline the recruitment process. So they went to some clever developers and they had them build applicant tracking systems. So if you go onto a job board or a corporate career portal, you're going to be dealing with one of these ATS, applicant tracking system. Now, if you're dealing with ATS, there are certain rules around building a CV or a resume. A lot of people, they think, right, if I build a CV which looks amazing, loads of graphics, it's got a sidebar on it, it's got floating text boxes all over it, it'll do, you know, it'll create the wow factor and I can apply with it and I'm going to get a job. No, that doesn't happen. And I know this because I used to design creative style CVs before I knew about ATS. And I actually went back to all my old clients and said, look, these CVs are no good. I need to change them. So I gave everyone a free upgrade and I changed everyone's CV into an applicant tracking system format. If you're dealing with applicant tracking systems, you need to keep it simple. I would keep it in one column just about throughout. Don't use any tables anywhere. Keep everything left aligned. You don't want to justify anything. If you justify information, what can happen is when information is getting passed over to a database, it can come over with big gaps in it because you're spreading all the words out. It goes into a system and it just doesn't look good. So keep everything left aligned. Give every title a clear section. Those section headings need to be a bigger and a bolder font than the main content. So when it's getting scanned, you know, a system is going to know what box to put this into. You know, when you're building a CV, a modern CV, it doesn't just need to look good to a human being's eyes. It needs to pass an applicant tracking system scan as well. Then comes in, you know, where is the balance between making this computer proof and also making it aesthetically pleasing to the eye?
Yeah.
So there's lots. I mean, I've played around with templates for the last 12 years. I've got a very good template now which works. It passes through ATS scans. But ultimately, what the applicant tracking system is doing, it's pre-filtering CVs prior to human review. And the reason recruiters use it is time is money. You know, they get hundreds of applicants. They just want a computer system to say, you know, find me the top 10 or find me, I would say usually they set it up on a percentage that matches the job description. Typically, it's an 80% match or more is going to go through for human review. And again, that depends on the industry. For instance, the oil and gas industry at the moment is in turmoil. It's on its knees. Two reasons: the oil price crashed and the coronavirus hit. So the market is inundated with qualified and experienced people. So recruiters can be a little bit more picky and more selective. They can say, you've got to have the right education. I want a 90% match. I want a 100% match on this system.
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah, it's really important.
Exactly.
And I wrote an article on this a few weeks ago. I did a little bit of research and it was coming back. I think 98% of Fortune 500 companies use applicant tracking systems. I would typically, now a lot of smaller companies won't use these. You've got to remember this. If it's a smaller company, I would say under a head count of 100, they're not going to have a HR department. There's going to be an operations manager doing everything. And on their website, it'll probably be email your CV to. Perfect. You've bypassed an applicant tracking system and you're getting through to a person. Just one other point I want to add on this, Tricia. If you do know you're dealing with an applicant tracking system, then typically you can look in the taskbar, the URL when you're on a website. If it changes from a corporate website to something else, you're dealing with a cloud-based database system somewhere. The corporation has got a license agreement to use that, and there's probably thousands out there now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know one that Shell uses is called Brass Ring, and that's IBM recruitment software. But there's another one called Careers. I think Chevron use that one. But if you can spot that you're doing that, what you can try and do is you can try and bypass that by using LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn to find the company you want to work for, and find the recruiters who are on LinkedIn. Find the HR managers. Find the heads of departments.
Yes.
And connect with them directly and get your CV in front of the decision maker. Absolutely. So you're going to bypass two things. You're going to bypass the ATS, and you're going to bypass a non-technical recruiter.
Yes.
Get to the decision maker. So I mean, this is what I coach my clients.
Absolutely. This is, you know what, without even meeting you before or discussing before we even had this conversation, we're on the same page. Always try to reach out, do your homework to find out who the hiring manager is, or someone in that organization that can be able to point you in the right direction to be able to network, rather than using purely or relying purely on that link or that application. So I'm really glad
a lot of these companies, though, I mean, you know, you've come from a recruitment background. Some of these companies, they have to advertise these jobs. It's part of their ISO accreditation or the bureaucracy and the regulations that they have to adhere to. Sometimes, you know, I remember 10 years ago, a friend, a colleague, Lee, send me your CV, I'll get you in, right? Yeah. That thing does still happen, but it's happening, you know, it's on the decline because of the bureaucracy. Sometimes now, well, you've got to jump through the HR hoops. So still remember, you know, have a CV which is applicant tracking system compliant. So you can actually go through those hoops. It's interesting though, because I had a client the other week say to me, and I've had this from a few clients, can you provide an application service where you take command of this for us and you actually apply for the jobs for us? Well, you know, that takes a lot of time, but that's something I'm thinking about introducing in the future. I don't know if you've ever touched on that.
Yeah, good question. I think this is what I said before. I wanted to touch on two things, and the second was being sort of the business operations side of thing, and when you're starting up these types of services, because a lot of people either they're unfamiliar. For example, the back end of LinkedIn. It's actually quite complex in what you can or shouldn't do, and whether or not I should be applying for applicants on my behalf. Even the likes of executives, for example, they are.
In LinkedIn, it's against the rules to log into another profile. Yeah. LinkedIn have got that in their agreement, which we all sign up to. I think it's there as a security kind of thing. Now, I follow a lot of influencers on LinkedIn, and some of them I have one-on-one calls with. Some of these people have got hundreds of thousands, millions of followers. And they're big on business development, helping companies develop using LinkedIn and strategies like that. And one of the topics which was picked up on, what was this? Can you log into someone else's profile? You're not supposed to. Do LinkedIn frown upon it? Yeah, they do. Do the LinkedIn police come after you? No, they don't. Right? I made a boo-boo on, I'll be honest, I made a boo-boo on LinkedIn about 2 years ago. I was using automated software to reach out, connect with people. And if you got these softwares kind of, you know, on overdrive settings, and they're reaching out to too many people and they're connecting you and you're sending messages out, what can happen is you can get banned from LinkedIn. And I know with me, I got a warning from LinkedIn. Don't do this. We know you're doing it. Can you stop doing it? I was very apologetic because my LinkedIn profile is like gold dust to me. So I stopped, and I don't use any automation software for the last 2 years. I just haven't done it. I know a lot of people in the UK that do use this software, but my advice is don't use it. Do it naturally. Take your time. Build your network.
Exactly. Even the likes of scheduled or targeting adverts, it's not worth it. You know, it's better off having an organic reach, as you said. But I guess how did you overcome, or how did you grow so quickly on LinkedIn? I think you're around 10 or 11,000 followers quite quickly. Is there any advice that you would give?
I don't. That's not really that. I don't see that as a lot of people will see that as a bit massive growth. Oh, he's got 10,000. That's not that many. There are people out there with millions of followers. There's people out there who do what we do, personal branding, who are running companies who have got 20 times the amount of followers I've got, and they've got way more reach. Now, I just said, yeah, I think I went from 0 to 5,000 when I was in the corporate world. I wasn't a CV writer full time. I was an engineer. And my profile was written around being project management and engineering in the oil and gas industry. And I jumped on the bandwagon. I've been on LinkedIn for over 10 years. And I knew then what it was going to become, and it was a great way of getting business. So I always got the recommendations on there. I used to use it for networking, and every day I would be connecting with people. A lot of people, when they go on LinkedIn, they look at it like Facebook. Oh, I'm only going to connect with the people I know. I call BS on this. You don't go to a networking event, put your hands in your pockets and go stand in the corner with your face to a wall, right? You go around, you introduce yourself, you give out your business card, you shake people's hands. Well, we can't do that anymore at the moment, but we will. We'll get back to that. And you connect with people and you improve your network. And this is what LinkedIn is for. It's a networking place. You know, you should be reaching out to people you don't know, people in the same industries. Now, again, CV writers, they're a funny bunch of people. Some of them don't want to connect with other CV writers, right? They're going to steal my business and whatnot. We're all different. We all come from different backgrounds. We can support each other. And like, yeah, I've been trying to help you. You've been trying to help me. It's great. But yeah, I mean, you need to outreach. So I managed to get to 0 to 5,000 just by reaching out to people. And if I met anyone on site or wherever I was in the world, are you on LinkedIn? Yeah, and we'd hook up. Mm-hmm. Then I used the automation software, which was a problem. I think I got an extra 2,000 from using automation. I then got to around 7,000, and then I then got it in my head that every day I was going to connect with 100 people. So I had this strategy. I would come in the office in the morning, and my first half an hour, 45 minutes was connecting with people, right? And also, it took such a long time, Tricia. I was looking at people's profiles, seeing what I had in common with them, and I was dropping that into a little message. Because if you've got something in common with someone, the chances go up dramatically of them accepting your request. Mm-hmm. Then I learned a lot more about sales and kind of dealing with pipelines and how to onboard people properly. So I'll be honest, I have got a templated message that I use when I reach out to people. I tweak it, I change it, I make it relevant to my audience. And then, if there's a question that comes through, I'm a person, I'm not a bot. Yes. I answer it. Yes. People like that. People like a face behind what's behind the scenes.
Exactly. And are you...
Now, the last little thing on that is, I would say once I got to around 10,000, I'd say it's a bit of a magic number. Makes you feel good. It's 10K. But people then started coming to me. You said about being like an influencer, an expert on LinkedIn. That doesn't happen overnight. You've got to put video content out. I've got 27 articles on LinkedIn. I used to do LinkedIn Live. LinkedIn Live was a great way of getting out there. I don't do it anymore, but I used to do a lot of videos before that. And you've got to brand everything. And if you brand everything correctly, so there's like a seamless or a seamless transition from LinkedIn to the website or from LinkedIn to me. Even my email signatures are all branded. It just works. It seamlessly works.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And by the way, yes, your email signature is fantastic. I remember this, which is something really good. But I think they say, who is they? I mean, when you hear it, they say don't use like cartoon caricatures on websites of yourself or whatnot. I've got them on mine. It's in my logo. Typically I'm walking around with a pair of shades on always, or I've got a pair of glasses on. I'm not wearing them today. I should do. But there does need to be a physical picture of you on a site. You can't just have an avatar everywhere. And I wouldn't put an avatar on LinkedIn. I would have a physical picture of you and what you look like. Yeah. And one with the pictures on LinkedIn, make sure you're smiling. Make sure you look approachable. There are so many people, and if you're in the UK,
if you're in the UK, you'll understand this. We've got a show called EastEnders in the UK, and there's a kind of a gangster figure in there called Phil Mitchell, and he's always got a face like this. I find a lot of people in business, high up in business, they want to look stern and like, you want to do business with me? Again, I call BS. Don't do it. The first thing you get judged on LinkedIn, in my opinion, is your photo. It's the first thing. This is why we don't put photos in the UK on CVs, because of prejudice. Yeah. Oh, I like the look of her, I like the look of him, or I don't like that, right? Prejudice. But I think CVs are changing, and I'm calling BS on this. I think pictures will be on CVs eventually, because they're on our online profiles.
Yeah.
So this,
in the Middle East, they're actually encouraged, which
yeah.
I agree with. That is a different story, to be honest, because exactly what you touched on, that prejudice, judgment, it's human nature. It happens, and people do judge as soon as you look at it, whether we like it or not.
Germany, it's a prerequisite. I've done a lot of CVs for some Germans over the years in the maritime, and they're like, oh, I must have a picture on my profile.
Exactly.
So you have to. I've got 2 templates, one with pictures and then another one without.
I'm the same. I try to encourage not to have it, but at the end of the day, it's the client's choice. But do you think that maybe CVs might be a dying tool, and maybe video resumes would be becoming more apparent?
No, I don't. Now, me and you can come on video, right? We're good at it. But the majority of people, I would probably hazard a guess, it's probably only, in my opinion, probably 1% of the population can come on and do a video, right? You've got to be very, when I started doing videos, I was rubbish, absolutely rubbish. I remember recording videos for my website, and I've got 10 years ago, videos of myself, hello, I'm Lee Woodrow, and it was just rubbish. And it took me such a lot. It's like presenting. I used to do a lot of presenting. I used to do a lot of instructing when I was in the military, and I'd be in front of a group of people. It comes naturally, but you have to learn certain skills, and you have to learn, videography. There's a good lady on LinkedIn, Pippa, someone who teaches how to people how to, and I watched a lot of her videos and how to improve myself, my body language, where to position my face in the video. You'll find when you're interviewing a lot of people, they'll be like, hey, how you doing? Right? And even in interviews on Skype, it's no good. You've got to position, the background's got to be good as well. But videos, not everybody can do it. If you put someone in a situation where they're not very, like I talked about introverts, you go to an introvert and say, right, I need you to do a video resume. They're going to make themselves look bad, but they're not bad. They're very good at what they do. And I think in any sales material, because ultimately a CV or a resume, it's a high-end sales document. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I look at this differently. I mean, when I employ sales techniques on my CV, and I look at it like, if you're going to go for a job, it's like a business deal. You are bidding for a project. So if you were a self-employed contractor, or you had a small business and you were preparing a technical bid, with a bunch of other companies, that marketing material is going to be spot on, right? And it's going to include case studies. This is why I include case studies on CVs. So, achievement-based case studies. But no, I don't think the video thing is going to take over, Tricia.
Mm-hmm. It's I don't know, it's really good to hear another perspective, because I've been interviewing a couple of people of late, and to be honest with you, they have the complete opposite opinion. So it's good to hear that an industry expert and someone leading the market maybe has a different opinion. So,
yeah, I've tried to do it. I've tried to do it with people. I had some construction manager a few years ago saying, look, Lee, I've made a video and I've put it on my LinkedIn profile. I looked at it objectively, and my advice was, take it down. I think you're giving yourself harm.
Comment one thing though, Lee. Whether we like it or not, maybe companies will demand it. For example, LinkedIn may have the ability to upload a video resume as part of your profile. So maybe it's coming, but we don't want it to be.
It'll come. Some people will use it. The extroverts amongst us will use it. I will use it. If there's a video function on there. Now, I mean, I've got videos on my profile of me talking about my service. Not everybody can do that, Tricia. Mm-hmm. You put a camera. There's people who are camera shy. Half the people in my family are camera shy. My wife is camera shy. I just get the picture. I get the camera and take a picture. No, don't take a picture of me. I don't want to be on camera.
Right, you're right.
The only people who are saying that videos will work are the people who are confident on video.
Yeah.
And there's not many of us, believe me.
Yes, fair enough. You raise a good point. I want to come back. You mentioned achievement-based resumes or achievement-based portfolios you were discussing. Could you walk us through maybe the difference between, or should there be a difference of an achievement-based CV, or it wouldn't matter? Is this
right? You can only put achievements in if you're a certain age and you've got experience. If you've got no experience, say you're a graduate, the only kind of achievements you can talk about is maybe, you know, what you were doing in university, the projects you were doing in university. So they can go on there. You might have done something outside of work, you know, outside of university, volunteering for an organisation. That might go in there, but it's going to be very, very hard to have achievements like with metrics if you're younger. Typically, they come, you know, I would say 5 to 10 years, you might start getting some metrics, but I cannot judge your success if you haven't got metrics in your CV. You might say, oh, I managed to improve this process and, you know, it was really good. Well, I'm looking at what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything, right? You've got to, you know, it was a certain, I don't know, the speed of doing something before was this. And after you got involved and you changed the process or you implemented new technology equipment, then the speed increased to this. So it's all about, you know, I think if I'm going to hire someone and you know, you're a hiring manager, you want someone to come in who can deliver business benefit, who can exceed their KPIs. So you need to give examples of this on your CV, how you've exceeded KPIs, how you've delivered business results. When you're a salesperson, it's very, very easy to do that. You know, you came on board, you had a sales target and you beat it by a certain percentage. You might even be able to put the numbers down there. You've also got to be careful when you're putting numbers down on a CV with non-disclosure agreements. You know, you might have worked for a company, you might think, oh, I'll put all this information in my CV, but the company doesn't want that out in the general public, in the public domain. That also goes on to people with security clearance. I deal with a lot of people who are ex-military, but a lot of people in cybersecurity, a lot of people in private security, and there are certain things that you can't put down on a CV. You have to be descriptive about the organisation. You don't mention who the organisation or, you know, project names, because you can make yourself a target, number one. And number two, it's illegal. You can't do that.
Exactly. This is exactly what I was coming to, and maybe my final point. But if you can't, and I agree, I work with a lot of company or clients that can't disclose company information, you know, for example, revenue figures, or maybe they were private deals, especially over in the Middle East, you've got a lot of government sectors that can't reveal these types of figures. So how would you suggest one does showcase achievements or maybe initiatives?
You can be descriptive about it. You could describe the type of project, maybe the environment. Don't mention the companies. I mean, if you wouldn't want to say ABC company was doing this in this location with this other company, and then it led to this merger or an acquisition, joint venture, and then all numbers around it. If it's new, I mean, if it's an old thing, usually these things are released into, if there's a press release, I always, you know, if I'm dealing with a client, I'll talk about, can we use this? And I'll Google it and I'll see if there's any press releases on the corporate website or on news websites. And then we can kind of establish what we can talk about and what we can't. I mean, this is high level CV writing. This is not you paying £50 for someone to go and write your CV, yes. Right? People who come to me, there's a lot of fact finding that goes on. There's a lot of research that goes on. I mean, I do research on keywords for at least half an hour with every client. We go on LinkedIn, we open up loads of different jobs, we go on different job boards, and I extrapolate the keywords for them. And I'm like, these are the buzzwords we need to use for you. You know, every client's different, aren't they?
Because at the end of the day, people, I'm always asked or requested for a discount. You know, you're too much for me, you're too much. Now, they don't understand that, yes, it may take physically maybe 2 hours, depending on the caliber of the person, to physically write the CV, all the way up to maybe 4 or 5 hours. But it's us, you're not paying for that. You're paying for the research that I have done to be able to physically write it. And this is what you don't get.
It's an interesting one. This is an interesting one. I like this question.
Yeah, it's not just the time that I'm spending on the CV you're paying me for. It's all of the research and my knowledge, connections, to be able to collate this
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this. Number one is convincing someone, and I'll get to that in a moment. The value that they can get. So the first one, yeah, I mean, being a CV writer, I mean, when I started, I told you this before we started the conversation. I think this started at £50 when I started in this game. I didn't know then what I knew now. But hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? You got to have knowledge of the industry. So when you're talking to someone, they feel comfortable with you and that you understand what they're trying to do on the CV. Number two, if someone wants a high-end CV, they've got to invest some of their time into it as well. Typically, that time is filling out some kind of proprietary questionnaire. Then it's going to be joining me or you or another CV writer on a call, a fact-finding call. Some CV writers, they do it on the telephone. I do mine using Zoom. I don't know what your team does, because I find with Zoom, like what everybody's watching now, me and Trisha are using Zoom, there's a lot more interaction. Also, you can share your screen with Zoom. And what I usually do is I share my screen. I have their CV or their resume, and I give them a complete review of it. I tell them where they're going wrong, and then I explain why I'm using a new methodology, how the new CV is constructed, the psychology of how somebody's going to read this CV, the importance of having applicant tracking system friendly, and I explain all the rules to them. I do that. Now, a lot of people would think, oh, Lee, you're teaching someone how to do your job. You're giving away all the golden information. No, I'm giving them the tools so they can update this in the future, right? Even if you give someone all those tools, Trisha, they're going to come back to you anyway. Oh, Lee, I need to do my CV. I've tried to do it. It doesn't work. Can you help me out? Yeah, no problem. Book another call. Right. So, and like you say, there's all the research. There's the experience which comes behind it. A lot of people in CV writing, they enter the industry and then they leave. Or and then there's certain people like yourself, and then I know a bunch of others, they're in the industry permanently. With me, I'm quite passionate about it. I think you can get that from our conversation. I love dealing with people. I love helping people get jobs. Now, this is where, so you charge, I don't know, say you charge £300 or £400 for a CV. It's not a cheap CV. I would say that there's more expensive services out there. I know there are. There's services which go up into the thousands. But if you check the review, when you're selecting a CV service provider, you need to check the reviews. Yes. So check the reviews, but don't just look at the reviews and they say, oh yeah, Lee or Trisha wrote my CV and it was really good. They dealt with me in a professional way. They gave me the CV on the deadline, and it met all my requirements. That's no good as a review. This is like, if you're going to use reviews, you need to use reviews with metrics. I keep going back to metrics. Again, this is a way to sell something. A review needs to include, with CV writing or LinkedIn optimization, you need to know how long it took someone to get a job. Ultimately, they're coming to us because they're struggling getting a job, and we are a solution to get them a job. Now, there's no point in me having a bunch of recommendations saying how nice I am or how nice my CVs look. They need to work. They need to get an interview. How long did it take? How many recruiters did you have knocking on your door or ringing you up? So what I tend to do with reviews is I wait. And I typically wait a month until there's some results. I mean, it depends on the industry, depends on the sector, what's going on. Coronavirus is affecting those metrics at the moment. Yeah. But typically I can get people interviews with better companies within a month.
This is a fantastic metric, and I myself as well maybe face difficulties getting this type of data, like people willing to give up whether they were successful or writing a review or submitting some information. When you've
to do that, Trisha, you need to get a deeper relationship with the client. You need that client walking away feeling like they're their family. And that's what I try and do with my clients. With my direct clients, I treat them like family.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. And maybe myself, I could, but I guess maybe getting my team to be encouraged to do that as well. Because once I've got 4 of us, 5, to be honest, these days I don't write a lot of resumes myself. I usually only write the executive CVs, but because I'm driving the business myself, I purely, the resumes that I bring into the table from the entire business is from me. And so I think you're right. I need to get my team to be able to build this relationship to get these.
That's difficult. That is very, very difficult. To have someone that feels as passionately about your business as you do, it's near enough impossible.
Yes.
Just one second, I need to put a fan on.
No worries. I'm almost finished.
Yep.
That's very weird. You're putting a fan on in the UK.
Yeah, I know. Well, we were, I don't know, it's like a mini heat wave here at the moment. It's really hot.
Goodness.
We're 28 degrees. It's not 28. It's probably outside around 20. But yeah, if I get to like 20 degrees in the UK in my garden office, it'll fuck the heat up in here, and especially midday. It's a nightmare.
I think we're here about, I don't know, maybe 44 or 45.
Yeah. I used to work in Dubai for a company called Weatherford.
Oh, wow.
Many years ago, so I know the environment.
Good.
I know the heat. Yeah.
Good. Alrighty, Lee. I have maybe one last question to follow up before you can give us out your contact information. If you could give our audience some pieces of advice for CV writing and LinkedIn. I haven't even touched on cover letters, but maybe we could have another conversation in another time around some personal branding or cover letter applications. But what would be maybe your 3 tips of advice to make sure that you are landing a job with your CV and your LinkedIn?
Right, number 1, which I think is probably the biggest mistake that I see, is people not calling themselves a job title in the real world, or they call themselves 2 or 3 job titles. If I'm going to hire someone, I want to hire an expert at one particular thing. So when you apply for a job, and look at the title. So say it was, say you're a sales director, right? But you've got a job that you want to go for. You want to be a business development manager. Call yourself a business development manager. The kind of 2 go together anyway, so that works. But yeah, make sure you're using a title in the real world. On LinkedIn, right? Sometimes people have put in their titles project management, right? Well, that's not a title. Project manager is a title, and you need to put the titles in there that you want to be found for. Now, LinkedIn's a bit different to a CV. With a CV, I would just have one title at the top. This is who I am. I am an experienced, boom, position in the real world. On LinkedIn, you can kind of cover a couple of roles, but I would put those roles in the title as they are, because people on LinkedIn are going to be searching for various positions. I mean, I know if you go on LinkedIn and you put the word project manager in there, you don't put quotations around, you get 27 million results. There's a lot. You want to make sure you want to appear at the top of that list. It's like a website. You Google a particular service. There's particular websites which will appear on page 1 of Google. LinkedIn's the same. You want to be appearing on that first page under what you do for a living. So yeah, number 1 is that I would make sure that the title is optimized. Number 2 on LinkedIn, I talked about the picture, the profile picture. Make sure you've got a nice profile picture, wearing what you would wear to work. Some people wear a suit, some people wear a tie. Most people don't, but they would, if you're a gentleman, at least wear a collar. You do not want a picture of a bar behind you with people having a drink, right? Or your family. Just a nice picture of you, smiling, looking approachable. That's what you want. And finally, on LinkedIn, the summary section. A lot of people don't even fill out the summary section. That summary section is really important. It's like a meta description on a website. So we're talking SEO, search engine optimization. You've got to fill that with the relevant keywords, and you've also got to fill it with information about how you can deliver value. Granted, I don't think a lot of those get read, but it helps with SEO and getting you appear higher on that list. CVs, make sure they're applicant tracking system friendly. Don't use a creative style CV, guys. Certain industries maybe. If you're a designer and you're sending it to a person, you might want a fancy CV that looks like that, but most of us are not designers. You want a functional applicant tracking system compliant CV. So they're my basic rules. There's lots more to it, but we're running out of time.
Yeah, another time, but absolutely fantastic. I think you've really, really brought some value and some new insights that many of us either didn't focus on or maybe even hadn't thought of. So thank you so much. And how can everyone get in contact with you if they would like to avail your services or your advice?
Very, very easy. All you've got to do is Google Bigger Fish, and I'll be on that page. It's www.bigger-fish.co.uk. It's my website. You can contact me through the website, or just search me on LinkedIn, Lee Woodrow, CV writer, world-class CV writer. You'll find me. Feel free after this, if you watch this video, connect with me. I'll accept the connection. I expect a few will come in today or whenever you post a video. I'll accept everyone that wants to be connected with you, no problem.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your...
One other thing, on my website, I've got a free guide. My guide talks about a lot of the things I've talked about today. Talks about applicant tracking systems, talks about achievement-based CVs, how to sell yourself and what to put on there. So there's a free guide on there and you can download that on my website.
Amazing. That sounds really, really fantastic. I would love to direct some traffic there for you because I'm sure that it will be very valuable to many, especially in these times when everyone's counting many pennies. So thank you so much, Lee. I really appreciate it. Let's keep... I'll pause the video.